Alright, everybody, I hope you're doing well. It's Hungry Procrastinator. And here is my deck profile for Katakuri. Katakuri, new leader for OP3, yellow color, 5 life, 5000 attack. And the ability reads as follows. For 1 Dawn that you attach, when attacking, you can look at 1 life card from the top of your or your opponent's life area and put it either at the top or bottom of the life area. Then the leader gains 1000. So that's pretty nuts for an ability. For 1 Dawn, you get to hit 7000 and you get to control what the next card your opponent and even yourself might get or might trigger. So pretty good ability, very flexible and very interesting playstyle, because that's pretty much what yellow will be doing, right? Like every time you play yellow, you will be playing with the life area of both yours and your opponents. And alright, so let's continue with the deck profile. First card here, and I'll go in order that it's shown here. So first we have Sanji. Sanji so far has been just a 2k counter, and even though the ability is pretty interesting, the fact that you don't really play with switching your life cards, well, at least I don't. I know it might be a good idea to just play him and then you may switch with the top card of your deck with something that you have in your hand, in your life area, and get a better card in your hand that way. But I think against the very aggressive matchups, you really need to have your 2k counters. So that's why I mainly use 2k counter, unless I really need to be like I have like a very bad hand and I really need to fill my board with something, then maybe I will be able to switch some of the cards, especially with my leader's ability, right? Since I get to see the card at the top of my life, maybe it's worth playing the Sanji and getting that card, right? There are a few cards that it might be worth it to do that, and we'll see them along the deck profile. The next one is Charlotte Cracker. Charlotte Cracker, it's a pretty decent card for 4 cost, 5000 attack. The ability is for 1 Dawn that you attach to the character. While you have less life than your opponent, this character gains double attack plus 1000. And it has a 1000 counter and is a trigger that by discarding 1 card, you get to play this card. So again, very good synergy with the leader since it's a trigger. So if you do your leader ability, you look at your card and you see Cracker, then you might want to keep it at the top so that you can trigger it and just have to discard 1 card to play it. And what's good is that depending on the matchup, you might be okay discarding cards in your hand, because some of the abilities only work if you have fewer life than your opponent. So if you do actually have fewer life, then maybe it's just worth playing it and discard one of the useless cards, because you have the aggression and you have the momentum to be able to afford to do that. And also, that's a very good card to be played to hit the magic number, because you'll hit for 7 if you have lower life, and you get over the 6000 attack for Whitebeard. So that's also pretty good, but you have to take into account that against Whitebeard, it's very hard to be lower than him, since every turn he draws 1 card from his life. So you have to make sure you take a lot more hits and survive until you can gain them back. So very tricky, so be careful about that. And after that, we have the Smoothie, Charlotte Smoothie. So for 4 cost, 5000 attack, 1k counter. When attacking, you may add 1 card from the top or bottom of your life to your hand, and then it gains 2000 attack. So that's an ability that you can always play whether you're lower or higher in life than your opponents, you get to play this ability. It's a very good ability. You get to reach that 7,000 attack that everybody likes because it takes 2 cards to deal with, which you counter unless you play an event. But early on, people usually don't play a lot of events until OP4, when Dofi will come out, and events are going to be insane. But for now, not so much. So this is a pretty good. You'll get to play her, at least in a couple of matches I have played her. I don't really use the ability because I'm still getting used to controlling my life, because one of the ways that we can do that is with our big characters at the end game, and you make sure that you survive until the late game to be able to replenish your life, and then after that you get to play those crazy cards. So you have to be careful about that, but it's certainly very good in certain situations. And you can also play this card as a trigger. Trigger, discard 1 card, and you may play this card. So that's another interesting way to play this card, and a reason why it's very good. And yeah, if not, it's a 1k counter, so that's always good. Here, Charlotte Pudding. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck because you have your searcher, right? Like, not a lot of the decks have searchers. Now with OP3 and OP4, almost every color is gonna have like decent searchers. So this is one of them. So for 1 cost, 2k attack, 1k counter, you on play effect, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, reveal 1 Big Mom Pirates type card, and add it to your deck. And obviously you cannot add another pudding, but you can also add a Sanji. So that's one of the reasons why Sanji is a good addition to the card to the deck, because it's a 2k counter and you get to search him with pudding. And yeah, and what's good about pudding is you get to search any type cards, so not only characters but even your events. So that's very, very good. And the next one is Perospero. That's a very good card. 3 cost for 5k damage, and the on KO effect is pretty insane. So on KO, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you reveal up to 1 Big Mom type card and add it to your hand. Then you place the rest at the bottom of your deck. So that's your second searcher for the deck, and it's a searcher that you can play on trigger again. So that's pretty much yellow. What they do is trigger all day. So for trigger, you may discard 1 card from your hand and you play this card. So that's a 5k body that your opponents can have to deal with. If they don't, yeah, 5k body that hits for a lot. So yeah, so that's your second searcher of the deck. With pudding, you have Perospero. So the deck with these 2 cards stays pretty consistent, and that's what you want from a deck. And then here we have Big Mom, 10 drop Big Mom for 12k attack on play effect, and that's for sure you have it at 4. Yeah, I forgot to mention, like, all of those cards you have it at 4 because they're very, very good, and I think they're pretty essential. Maybe Smoothie and Cracker you can like play around with, like maybe 3-3 and play other cards, but for now I feel like 4-4 are pretty good. Pudding at 4, of course, it's a searcher. Perospero is a searcher at 4, and then your Big Mom, your Charlotte Linlin, you play 4 because the card is just too good, you know. For 10 cost, 12k attack, on play, if your leader has a Big Mom Pirates type, place up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. So first effect, you gain a life from the top of your deck, and then you trash 1 life from your opponent. So not only are you gaining one, but you're also taking one away from your opponent. So that's a reminder to Kaido's effect, right? Kaido's effect is you remove 7 dons, right? Minus 7 dons, and you get to trash one of your opponent's life. But now we have it as a character ability, which is pretty insane. And yeah, so that's why you have it at 4. And then after that, the big body for 12, it's pretty much unstoppable because you have so many 2k counters to protect her. So 4 of her for sure. Then you have this guy, not sure how to say, Streusen, we'll go with that. Yeah, another 2k counter. This guy here, the same with Sanji, is pretty much there for a 2k counter. Because maybe on play against Zoro or Whitebeard or Ace, you would use this guy to get rid of a 1 cost, just to reduce the aggression a bit. But it's just that after that, you're stuck on the board with a 1k attack character, which is very hard to bump up unless you just put 4 dons on him. And it's not the most cost-effective way to use a card or to use your dons. So that's why most of the time you just play him for your 2k counter. So for now, that's your second 2k counter of the deck. And the next one, another big character, Katakuri, the 8 cost Katakuri for 8000 attack. On play effect, put up to one character with a cost of 8 or less on the top or at the bottom of its owner area face up. So this is pretty good because that's the kind of the Mihawk effect that everybody wanted on Mihawk, to be able to bounce 8 or less cost on the field. But instead of bouncing it back on in the hand of your opponent, you bounce it to the life area and you put it face up, so you always have a reminder what's in his life area. I put it at 2 because before I was like at 3 or 4, but I found it too much of a dead card late game, because the other 2 big moms are, in my opinion, either a little bit better. The a little bit better, it's the other big mom that we haven't seen yet, or a lot better, which is the 10 cost big mom. So it's like you get to play him once, and then after that you want to try to aim for the 10 cost, right? Or you play a combination of the smaller characters. But yeah, I don't think you would want to play him like multiple turns in a row, as opposed to playing your big mom in a row, right? Like playing like 2 big moms in a row, if you have the opportunity, it's insanely strong. So that's why I put it at 2, because it's still a very good card. But late game becomes, like outside of your curve, it becomes a bit awkward to play it sometimes, because it's an 8 cost that bounces back 1 character, but that's it. Doesn't do that much. And then yes, it's a big body, but if your opponent has a bigger field, it gets tricky. Now the other one is the 4 cost Katakuri. So the 4 cost, I put it at 3 because so let's read the ability. Let's read the card. So for 4 cost, 6000 attack. On play, you get to look at 1 card from the top of your or your opponent's life area and put it either at the top or bottom of the life area. So pretty much a little bit like the ability of RGHT. This one has the same ability, so that's pretty good because you have multiple cards to look at each other's life area. So like eventually, maybe either with another leader or along the line, you'll have a lot more control as to what you can do with people's life area, or at least I assume. So yeah, so it's good to have multiple area, but that's not where the crazy part begins, because one of his second ability is if you have less life cards than your opponents, that card gains rush. So this card is insanely good if you go second. So if you go second, try to get that card. Like mulligan for that card or try to search for that card, because you will get to gain rush for free most of the times, right? Because your opponent's gonna go first and he's gonna attack first. So you, at your second turn, you get to play Katakuri. So either you mulligan for it, because obviously you want to mulligan for Pudding, right? Pudding, Perospero are pretty good cards to get, but this one is also, it's very good if you're going second, because if you have it on your hand, for sure you're playing it on your second turn and you get 2 attacks instead of 1. So that way you kind of catch up on the aggression of your opponent, because you'll have 2 attacks. So it's either he discards multiple cards in his hand or he takes the lives. So insanely good. Next is Brulee. Been testing her and she's been pretty good so far for me, especially because, like, yes, it's oh yeah, I forgot to say, Katakuri, we keep it at 3, but you can now see that name. And Brulee, since it's a 3 cost, it's a very expensive card to play, especially for a blocker of 1k, but it's still 1000 counter, and the trigger, you get to play the card. So if you're doing Katakuri's ability, like both Katakuri's abilities, and you get to see that you have Brulee, then it's a no-brainer. You leave her at the top, and you just trigger her, and you have yourself a blocker, a free blocker, and you don't even have to discard anything. But if you get her at the beginning of the game in your hand, then it's a little bit more awkward to play. But still, you might find ways to play her from your hand, or most of the time you just use her as a 1k counter. So that's why you have 3. It's 4, I think, like, yes, 4, you'll have more consistency, but I do believe that the other cards are worth playing. Then we have the other version of Pudding, which is your third 2k counter. So in this deck, we play 12 2k counters, because since you're managing your life, it's important to have as many 2k counters as you can. And actually, I think these are the only 2k counters we have. Maybe there's another 2k counter that I forgot. Let me know in the comments below. Maybe I forgot that there's another 2k counter for yellow, for OP3. But if there's not, then these are the only 3 2k counters that you have, or at least the better ones. So yeah, so 2 cost for 3000 attack, you have 2k counter, and on play effect, you can look at one of your 1 life at the top or bottom, at the top of mine or your opponent's area, and then put it either at the top or bottom. So you just look at 1 card and decide to put, like, where to put it. It's a pretty good effect, but you have that effect with both Katakuris, so you don't really use her for the effect. So honestly, 4 2k counters for your hand. Next is the last one of the last character and the last big character. So you have Big Mom, the 7th cost this time, the one from the starter. 7 cost for 8000 attack. On play effect. So on play, your opponent chooses one of the following abilities, which is pretty messed up if you ask me. You know, it's like you let your opponent make the decision, takes away a little bit of your control, but at the same time plays into the mind game of the game, right? So the first ability is your opponent will trash 1 life, or you get to put 1 extra life from the top of your deck. So depending on the situation, and you have to time her properly, depending on what you want your opponent to do. So if you want your opponent to trash a card from his life, maybe try, like, if you can play her on curve, maybe sometime, like most of the time, that's what's gonna happen, because since you'll be taking a lot of damage, he's gonna think he can afford to lose a damage. but he should start to get used to that you can gain your life back with Big Mom. Or if you put it in the late game, that's another resource that you get to add a life, because he's going to be low on life. He's not going to want to remove a life from his. So either situation, it's a pretty good advantage to play this card. I have her at 3 because I was trying to limit the non-counters, because we have 4, 7, 10, 12 no counter cards, or character with no counter. So it's a bit much, but so far I think it's been good since we have 2 searchers in the deck. Now for the events, we have the Ikoku Sovereignty. The counter for 2 cost, you gain 5000 power, and then when you trigger that, you may discard 2 cards and add yourself a life. So sometimes the trigger is better than the effect, because you get to add yourself a life and you get to discard the Katakuris that you're not going to play anymore, and anything else that you have too many of, right? Because you have 4 Big Moms, which you're never going to play 4, so maybe you can afford to lose one, or maybe another Katakuri, or anything else that is useless, not useless, but less useful in the late game. Then you have the Buzzcut Mochi, second event or 2, and this one is for the aggressive decks. Like if you're playing against aggressive decks, this card is pretty good, because you get to for 2 cost, main effect, if you have less life than your opponent, you kill up to one of your opponent's character with a cost of 4 or less. And the trigger is you get to play a character for that cost 4 or less with trigger from your hand, and you have a lot of targets. You have Perospero, you have Smoothie, and you have Cracker, and you have also Brulee. So you have, like, how many? You have 15 characters that you get to play with this trigger. 15 out of 50, that's a pretty good odds to have one of those cards in your hand. And again, because of the 2 Katakuri's ability, you get to see if you can trigger Mochi or not. If not, well, the regular trigger is pretty good. And then the last card of the deck is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt, event for 2. And main, you may trash 1 card from the top of your life, and then you get to KO one of your opponent's 5 cards or less. And if you trigger the effect, you get to destroy your opponent's character for 5 or less with no consequence. So this is pretty good, an amazing trigger, especially against black that have all the unkillable targets. Like, well, I guess it's Borsalino, I should say. You get to kill Borsalino. It's pretty good. And you get to destroy the Marcos against the red and all the other cards that can be troublesome. And yeah, so that's it for my version of the deck. I will be posting some gameplay of the deck, and I hope you'll check. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see this deck being tested. Sorry, it was a bit long. Like, I never have scripts for this, so I just say what I have in mind about the cards, how I feel when I play. And yeah, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of the deck profiles, and if you want to see the deck in action. So yeah, and leave a like if you're also picking up the yellow color. Big thumbs up please, and leave a comment. Let me know what card would you take off or put in this deck. I'm always open to feedback. Like, this is what I've been testing, and this is what's been feeling good for me. But maybe I will be doing some adjustments in the deck. So yeah, so let me know. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.